Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. I have been on the search for a fabric panel. I've been wanting to use a fabric panel in a quilt, and every time I go to the quilt shop or I look online, I look for fabric panels, and I just haven't found one yet that speaks to me. So the other day I was up in my fabric stash looking for unrelated fabric to fabric panels, and I stumbled upon this fabric here. I got this fabric a long time ago, ages ago. And I got it at our fabric reuse center. Every now and then they'll have these like bag sales where they put a bunch of fabric out on the table and you can kind of take any fabric you want for almost next to nothing. And this was one of those pieces of fabric on the table, and I thought that's a super cool piece of fabric. But then I've just had it for so long because I haven't known what to do with it. But what I realized the other day when I was looking for fabric is even though this is not a panel, it can act like a panel. You can see how you can cut, this piece here, and this piece here, and this piece here. So that's what I want to do. I want to try and cut this into pieces, using it kind of like a panel, and just see what we come up with. So let's do it. I have about 2 yards of this fabric, a little more than 2 yards. And the first thing that I want to do is kind of identify what pieces I want to cut out. So I want to cut out this piece separate from these two kind of arrow looking pieces. But instead of cutting them out kind of individually from this larger piece of fabric, I'm going to see how far I can cut up before I hit another shape. So I'm going to cut out this full block here, and then I'll cut this full block into pieces. So let's go ahead and do that. Now normally I would just cut over a little bit with my rotary cutter, but because I don't want to go into this next square, I'm just going to trim right exact to that corner here with my scissors. And here is my first piece, and I have a lot of pieces within this piece to work with, so we'll keep cutting this down, but we'll put that aside for now. Let's cut out this deer next. And you can see this pretty pattern kind of goes into the deer space. So I'm going to sacrifice this pretty pattern, and we'll just consider this to be part of the square. So now I have a piece coming down here and across. So I'm just going to cut this right off, and now I'll have 2 strips. The cool thing is when I make this quilt, and you can see this looks like it has paint on it or something, but it's actually not. This is part of the texture of the fabric, and it kind of happens throughout all the prints. You can see it kind of here and up here and stuff, which I think is cool. But so now I have these 2 pieces, and what I can do, since these will repeat, since I have 2 yards, I'll be able to kind of attach these together to add borders and that kind of thing. So that's exciting. Next we can cut out this deer, and we'll cut out this piece at the same time, and then we'll separate these pieces later on. And then we are back to this guy over here. We already have one of him. And so I'm going to keep going on this whole panel, cut all the pieces out, and then we'll cut some of those pieces into smaller pieces. So I've cut up my pieces. You can kind of see them over there. And now I need to decide, I need to cut them kind of farther down. So for example, something like this, I need to decide what to do. I could cut it, continuing down this way and leave these pretty pieces at the top, or I could cut it across here and I'd have this piece of fabric separate. Or I could cut them into rows. Each one of these really could be its own row. So I need to think about that. I have a bunch of these. As you can see, let's see how many. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. I think I want to leave these as intact as possible. So I'm going to cut right along here, so right below this line of triangles. So now I have this piece and this piece. So I will go ahead and do that for all 4 of these. Next I have these pieces. So it's a leaf with half of this kind of decorative square here. So the square gets cut off in the middle of all of these. So I think I'm just going to cut the leaf and use the leaf, and then I'll put these pieces aside. I don't really want to use it since it's cut in half, but maybe I can use it somewhere in a creative way, maybe on the back or something like that. So I will save these pieces, but I'm going to put them separately. I might not use them. I have cut these up. One interesting thing that I could do with these is put them with all of the leaf, what are these called? Put the base of the leaf in the middle, just like this. And it kind of makes a pretty pattern. And I have a bunch of these, so I'd have plenty to do a couple. But that looks kind of cool. So maybe I could do something like that. Next, we have our first deer. So in looking at this deer, I have a choice to make. I'm definitely going to cut off this top part here. But in terms of the bottom part, I could leave this on, kind of like a border that he's walking along, or I could cut it off and use it separately. I am inclined to leave it for now, and if I need to cut it up, I will. But I think I'm just going to trim the tops and then leave the bottom part on. And when I trim these, I'm giving myself as much room for the seam allowance. So for example, this part here at the top will get caught in the seam allowance. I might cut that a little bit closer actually. But I want to give myself a little bit of room from the square that the deer is inside of, so that you keep as much of the border as you can. The other thing that's cool is that I just found the date of this fabric. So this fabric was made in 1996. So because I got this fabric secondhand, I didn't really know a lot about it, but that's kind of cool. That's one of the really good thing about salvages. And I always keep my salvages. I just did a interesting salvage project that I'll link to below, but save your salvages. This is also a tricky one because even though the edge of the square ends here, the antlers go all the way up pretty high up here. So visually this one is going to look kind of strange in my opinion, because I am going to want to leave this empty space here, but that's okay. And who knows, maybe I'll change my mind and I'll just cut the antlers off, but for now I'm going to leave them on. And then on the border, on the bottom, I could cut these little snowflakes off and have those separate, but again, I'm going to leave these on and decide on that later, but I think they'll stay. Here are all of my pieces cut out, and I have different numbers of different types. So for example, these I only have 3 of, but these I have probably close to 12 of these. So that will be fun to kind of experiment with and see what I can do with different numbers. The other thing I wanted to mention is that what I did here is really just fussy cutting out fabric. So for example, if you were to take this eagle American fabric and wanted to just, have a couple of these in your quilt, a couple eagles in your quilt, you could fussy cut the eagle out of the fabric. Same with something like this. This is some beautiful fabric, but let's say you just wanted, this house and bunny. You could cut that out of the fabric. So that's really just what I did here. But the difference is that these pieces were all kind of naturally in a way that I could cut them into squares and rectangles. And that makes it more similar to a panel than most other fabric. So I'm going to start kind of messing around with these pieces, moving them around in different ways, pairing them with some other fabric that I'll bring into this blanket. But this is where I'm going to stop this video for now. And then next time we'll start sewing some of the pieces together. So keep an eye out for those panels. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.